Guatemala is set for several days of demonstrations to reject the appointment of judges to the Constitutional Court. Jury selection began on Tuesday in the high-profile trial of the former Minneapolis police officer accused of killing George Floyd. In Spain, former Catalan leader and current member of the European Parliament, Charles Puigdemont, denounced political persecution as MEPs voted to lift his parliamentary immunity. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. Guatemala is set for several days of demonstrations to reject the appointment of judges to the Constitutional Court. The Social and Popular Assembly of Guatemala announced on Monday it would hold several days of protest from March 9th to 11th in rejection of what it described as the malicious election of the Constitutional Court judges. From its Twitter account, the organisation called on the population to join the mobilisations. President Alejandro Giammattei summoned the Council of Ministers for Wednesday to participate in the session where they will appoint a regular and an alternate magistrate of the court for the period 2021 to 2026. However, the Assembly has stressed that the appointment of judges represents co-optation of the courts, which seeks more impunity for those who steal from the nation. In Ecuador, heavy rains caused flooding in several sectors of the city of Guayaquil, with airport and transportation services temporarily suspended. The intense rain caused heavy traffic congestion and flooded streets and houses. The Mayor's Office of Guayaquil activated a winter emergency plan with the use of crews and extraction machines to carry out water draining works. Since February, 83 emergencies caused by rains have been reported in the capital, Quito, where the fire department has attended 60 alerts for floods, mass movements and collapsed structures. According to the National Met Institute, the current conditions could last until mid-March. To mark International Women's Day on Monday, President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, signed a federal agreement with provincial governors to promote united action against gender-based violence in the country. The President and governors, as well as the Minister of Women, Genders and Diversity, Elizabeth Gomez, signed the federal agreement for an Argentina united against gender-based violence during an act held at the Bicentennial Museum of the Presidential Palace to tackle the widespread cases of femicide in the country. During his speech, Fernandez stressed the importance of ensuring gender equality and noted that the state reaction to cases of femicide is slow or non-existent.
Today, we are taking steps as a society that encouraged us to build competent state policy that will lead us to agree that there are things that we will not tolerate in any corner of Argentina, and one of those things is gender-based abuse, much less femicide, and we will not agree to unequal treatment of women in the workplace or in family life.
According to a study by the World Health Organization and its partners, nearly 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetimes.
The report includes data from 158 countries on intimate partner violence and sexual violence by a non-partner for women and girls aged 15 years and older. The results paint a horrifying picture. An estimated 736 million women, almost 1 in 3 women globally, have suffered intimate partner violence, sexual violence from a non-partner, or both, at least once in their lives.
And the report released on Tuesday also found that gender-based violence starts at an early age.
And almost 1 in 4 adolescent girls in a partnership have experienced physical and or sexual violence from a partner or husband before their 19th birthday. Globally, women in lower middle income countries suffer disproportionately from violence, especially in Oceania, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Asia. Violence against women is not just criminal. It has long-lasting implications for the physical, mental, sexual, and reproductive health of women.
contains global.
Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez arrived in Cuba on Monday to discuss bilateral relations and ongoing cooperation between the two countries. The Vice President is attending the 21st session of the Intergovernmental Commission of the Cuba-Venezuela Comprehensive Cooperation Agreement, chaired by Cuban Deputy Prime Minister Ricardo Cabrisa Ruiz. According to the Cuban Foreign Ministry, the Venezuelan guest will hold talks with authorities and carry out several other activities. Jury selection began on Tuesday in the high-profile trial of the former police officer accused of killing George Floyd, an African-American whose death sparked mass protests against systemic racism and police brutality in the United States and around the world. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is facing second-degree murder and manslaughter charges in connection with Floyd's death. Jury selection had been scheduled to begin on Monday but was delayed for a day as prosecutors sought to reinstate a third-degree murder charge against a 44-year-old former police officer. A court of appeals has not yet issued its ruling, but Hennepin County Judge Peter Cahill decided to go ahead with jury selection, a process expected to take about 3 weeks, with opening arguments in the trial expected to begin around March 29th.
19 is granted without objection. Your Honor? Yes.
And security for the trial against the former police officer is high as National Guard troops stand watch outside the Hennepin County Government Center in Minneapolis. Chauvin was dismissed from the force after he was captured on video by a bystander with his knee on the neck of a pleading Floyd for nearly 9 minutes. Venezuela has begun vaccinating teachers against COVID-19 after President Nicolas Maduro called for a return to in-person teaching in April. The government plans to inoculate around 100,000 teachers with the vaccine produced by Chinese lab Sinopharm. On the weekend, President Maduro stated that on-site classes suspended last March should be resumed in April. Venezuela launched its vaccination campaign against COVID-19 on February 18th after receiving a first batch of the Russian Sputnik V vaccine, which was destined to health sector workers. According to the government, the country has received 200,000 doses of Sputnik V out of a total of 10 million agreed with Moscow and 500,000 doses from Sinopharm.
In my community, there were many infected people, and I saw firsthand what COVID is at the beginning, but now there is confidence and we have already handled more the educational part of how to work with the children, the health protocols, how to work at school, so there is a lot of confidence with this vaccine. I think we're going to come back peaceful in April.
It's excellent, since this is what can cure us to be able to continue with our work, and since this new trend is here, we all have to get vaccinated. This is necessary. There are people who are afraid to get it. It does not cause any effect. I just go in it and I feel perfectly fine.
The Director General of the World Health Organization urged on Tuesday to follow scientific guidelines to control the pandemic instead of taking shortcuts.
We have come so far. We have suffered so much, and we have lost so many. We must not squander the progress we have made. We have the tools to control the pandemic, but we can only do it if we use them consistently and equitably. Science, solutions, and solidarity remain our guide. There are no shortcuts.
The Chinese government has been trying to bolster its economy since mid-2020 after having successfully confronted the COVID-19 pandemic. Our colleague and CGTN's reporter in Wuhan, Pan Jingjing, brings us more insights in the following report.
The Chinese government has been trying to boost the economy since mid-2020. The country has implemented a series of business-friendly policies, among others, including tax cuts, subsidies, and financial support. In addition, local governments have issued coupons to encourage consumption among their citizens. China became the world's first major economy to record economic growth in 2020.
This Tuesday, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh warned that hospitals have reached over 100% occupancy as they struggle to deal with the third wave of coronavirus infections.
The third wave of the coronavirus pandemic continues to severely affect our Palestinian society, and hospital occupancy rates in some areas have reached over 100%. The occupancy rate of intensive care units exceeds 100% despite the doubling of numbers of units since the beginning of the pandemic. The number of cases and deaths are increasing on a daily basis, which forces us to strict, direct and unprecedented measures. In parallel to the deadly virus we are battling, we are also facing an increase in the virus of settlement, which is trying to undermine international efforts to preserve the chances of establishing a Palestinian state, as settlement activity has become an electoral card in the electoral debate between the various Israeli parties.
In Spain, former Catalan leader and current member of the European Parliament, Charles Puigdemont, denounced political persecution against him as MEPs voted to lift his parliamentary immunity. The European Parliament on Tuesday lifted the immunity of Puigdemont and former Catalan health and education ministers Clara Ponsati and Toni Comín, who were wanted for sedition over the organisation of a banned separatist referendum on Catalonia's independence in 2017. With the decision, judicial authorities in Belgium and Scotland, where the trio are residing, will be able to consider extradition requests by Spain's Supreme Court, though in the meantime they can continue to perform their duties as members of the European Parliament.
It is a sad day for European Parliament. We have lost our immunity, but the European Parliament has lost more than that. And as a result, European democracy too. This is a clear case of political persecution. It is a sad day.
And Spain's Foreign Minister reacted to the European Parliament decision to strip the former president of the Catalonia region and two of his associates of their parliamentary immunity.
The European Parliament has decided to lift the parliamentary immunity of Carles Puigdemont, Clara Ponsati and Toni Comín to appear before the Spanish justice, and with this decision they send a triple message. First, that a member of European Parliament cannot use their status to protect themselves from appearing before national justice for possible violations of national laws. A second is a message of solidity regarding the rule of law of Spain, of respect for the work of the Spanish justice system, and a third message, and that is that the problems of Catalonia are resolved in Spain, they are not resolved in Europe.
In his first speech after being released on Monday, Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko blamed his arrest on President Macky Sall, accusing him of seeking to sideline his future political prospects before the country's 2024 election. Sonko was arrested due to rape allegations.
In our memory, we have never experienced in this country ever a situation like this one. Many crises have been gone through, political crises, but we have never experienced one like this one. It is really serious because the arrival of President Macky Sall had raised the hopes of all Senegalese people with a cry of promise. All this positive synergy shows that in moments of doubt, anxiety, and turbulence, our social regulators work, and the pillars of our nation remain strong. On the judicial aspect of this crisis, let us allow justice to take its course in complete independence.
On Tuesday, workers in Mauritius began pumping 130 tons of fuel from a Chinese fishing vessel that ran aground on a coral reef off the west coast of the Indian Ocean island. According to local media, the grounded ship has spilled a small amount of fuel into the sea, but its hull remains intact. Police helicopters are helping to remove the diesel fuel and oil lubricant from the stranded ship. Authorities said it's expected to take up to 5 days to empty the vessel and remove it from the reef. The 150-foot trawler ran aground when it was entering the port of Pont aux Sables on Sunday. The Ministry of Fisheries has launched a preliminary investigation into the incident. In Myanmar, over 1,000 protesters returned to the streets of the country's second-largest city, Mandalay, on Tuesday. Protesters were carrying homemade shields bearing the symbol of the three-fingered salute to represent defiance. They only rallied for a few minutes before dispersing to avoid any potential confrontation with riot police. Protesters have seemingly adapted their tactics in the face of escalating levels of violence from security forces which have included the use of live ammunition. To date, the military government's crackdown has left more than 50 protesters dead. In addition, over 1,800 people have been arrested, including dozens of journalists. Protests also persisted in southern Myanmar on Tuesday, more than a month after the nation's elected government was ousted in a military takeover. Demonstrators marched through the small city of Dawai, carrying the flag for detained leader Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy. The military government placed a major curb on media coverage of the crisis, announcing that the licenses of 5 local media outlets have been cancelled. Protesters in other parts of Myanmar defied night curfews on Monday, seeking to show support for an estimated 200 students trapped by security forces in a small area of one neighbourhood in Yangon. China stressed on Tuesday its plans to improve the electoral system in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region are totally constitutional and represent a domestic affair that other countries must not interfere in.
They are apparently unreasonable. This is an obvious act of interfering in China's internal affairs and Hong Kong affairs. Endowed by the Constitution, the National People's Congress has the right and responsibility to improve the electoral system of the HKSAR from the national level, which is conducive to promoting the policy of one country, two systems, and maintaining the long-term stability of the HKSAR. This is completely constitutional, legal and reasonable. The purpose of improving the electoral system is to make up for the shortcomings of the current electoral system in the HKSAR. We believe it will better guarantee democracy and freedom for the Hong Kong people.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.